On this Sunday night, Iran's call to end the war in 30 days. What Tehran's 14-point peace proposal entails, President Donald Trump's response.
They want to make a deal, they're decimated.
And what may be the real stumbling block to end the crisis. Ukraine's efforts to dilute Russian oil profits, a direct result of the Iran war.
Russia clearly is advantaged here. They've made a lot more money from higher oil prices.
As Mark Carney tries to strengthen ties with European allies in Armenia. Local state of emergency. Homes destroyed in an Alberta community 10 years after the Fort McMurray wildfires leveled much of the city. And holding out hope.
We're winning this. Come on, let's go, Raptors.
The Toronto Raptors must win Game 7 in Cleveland.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Iran's foreign ministry says it's reviewing an official response from the U.S. to its latest peace proposal, calling to end the war within 30 days. While referring to, quote, very positive discussions, U.S. President Donald Trump has also cast doubt on the prospect of a diplomatic breakthrough, claiming Tehran's 14-point plan would not be, quote, acceptable. Iran's new proposal calls for Washington to withdraw U.S. forces stationed near Iran's borders, to end its naval blockade of the regime's ports, and for all fighting, including Israel's offensive in Lebanon, to end. And despite a fragile 3-week ceasefire still holding, the fear of further escalation remains a real possibility after a cargo ship navigating near the Strait of Hormuz was attacked. And late today, President Trump said the U.S. will start guiding stranded ships out of the strait. Candace Cole has our top story tonight.
U.S. President Donald Trump is looking over a new 14-point proposal submitted by Iran that calls for an end to the war within 30 days, according to Iranian state media.
They want to make a deal, they're decimated.
In their new proposal, Iran wants the U.S. to withdraw its forces and a guarantee against future military action, an end to the fighting in Lebanon, lifting of sanctions, and an end to the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports.
It's a very friendly blockade. Nobody's even challenging it. Nobody at all is challenging it.
However, Trump has already signaled he likely won't agree to the new terms, posting on social media he can't imagine that it would be acceptable and that they haven't paid a big enough price for what they've done to humanity. But experts say the real holdup is Trump's desire to prove he can broker a better nuclear deal than the 2015 joint plan brokered by former President Barack Obama.
Ultimately, Trump's goal is he will need to get an agreement that is better than the JCPOA that Obama negotiated, from which he withdrew in 2018. And until that happens, Trump's going to continue to put the thumbscrews on the regime in Tehran.
But as the stalemate between Washington and Tehran continues, the price of goods like fertilizer and food continue to rise, along with gas prices.
What's really needed is for flow to resume through the Strait of Hormuz. You can't take 20% of the energy out of the system. The key thing is to restore that flow. It allows markets to begin to rebuild these inventories. It allows us to get products to where they're needed and to alleviate some of the pressure.
Iran is now reviewing the United States' response to their proposal, according to an Iranian spokesperson. Candace Cole, Global News, Washington.
Israel's barrage in southern Lebanon is showing no signs of letting up. Israel's defense minister now says the military campaign and ground offensive against Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah has been modeled on tactics used in Gaza, where entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. The war reignited in early March after Hezbollah attacked Israel in solidarity with Iran. According to Lebanon's health ministry, since that time, Israeli strikes have killed more than 2,600 people. Prime Minister Mark Carney is in Armenia's capital today as the first non-European leader to attend the European Political Community Summit.
For Canada, it's an honor for Canada to be invited.
Today, Carney met with the prime ministers of Poland and Armenia, among others. He also spoke with the president of the European Union's parliament, who invited Carney to address the assembly in the future. The trip is Carney's latest diplomatic effort to build new international trade and security ties, as Canada's alliance with the U.S. is ruptured under President Trump. It also comes on the heels of Trump announcing he'll be pulling thousands of American troops out of Germany and threatened to do the same to NATO allies Spain and Italy. The priorities for leaders gathering at this summit in Armenia is the war in Ukraine. Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to meet one-on-one tomorrow with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. As the Iran war pumps up the price of gas, Ukraine has stepped up attacks on Russian energy sites and the Kremlin's sanctioned oil supply lines. Mackenzie Gray reports.
They're the economic lifeline for Russia in its war with Ukraine. Oil exports to countries like Syria, done by a fleet of sanctioned tankers, that Ukraine was able to take a small bite out of. 3 tankers no longer able to operate thanks to drone attacks, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
Good to see you.
A key topic when Zelenskyy met with a host of European leaders in Armenia.
You give example and gave example, great example to other countries, so shadowfully. And I think this is so important now to feel it, and I think that Russia's economy feels it, especially this year.
But if you ask the Russians, they're not feeling it, despite Ukraine also hitting energy facilities as far as 1,500 kilometers inside Russia. A Kremlin spokesperson says each attack just pushes oil prices higher, giving the state more money. The sale of Russian oil has also gotten easier thanks to the Trump administration dropping some sanctions in a bid to ease high gas prices due to the war in Iran.
Russia clearly is advantaged here. They've made a lot more money from higher oil prices. They've managed to provide some support for the Iranians. Trump hasn't hit them back. In fact, he's suspended sanctions, so I think they feel stronger against Ukraine.
Russia able to deliver that oil thanks to that fleet of hundreds of tankers that skirt sanctions and maritime laws.
When Russia invaded Ukraine and the West imposed a price cap on Russian oil, but Russia wanted to keep exporting oil, and that meant they had to essentially do it secretly.
Ukrainian attacks have been matched by the Russians, including on the southern city of Odessa, where 2 people died this weekend, a part of a slowly grinding 4-year war, which launched the last major oil shock.
So the price effect, the energy effect and energy prices from the Iran conflict is already by some measures as big or larger than when Russia invaded Ukraine.
An effect not only hitting consumers at the pump, but also the battlefield in Russia and Ukraine. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, Ottawa.
3 people have died after a suspected hantavirus exposure on a cruise ship sailing in the Atlantic. The outbreak was reported on the MV Hondias traveling between Argentina and Cape Verde. According to the World Health Organization, 1 case of hantavirus infection has been confirmed, and there are 5 additional suspected cases. 1 person remains in intensive care in South Africa. Today is World Press Freedom Day. Journalists around the globe are being honored, especially those who have been censored, jailed, abused, or even killed for doing their jobs.
Oggi si celebra la giornata mondiale della libertà.
In the Vatican, Pope Leo urged people to remember journalists who have fallen victim to wars and violence, while lamenting how often press freedoms are violated, whether blatantly or in secret. According to a 2025 UNESCO report, press freedom around the world has dropped by 10% since 2012, a steep decline similar to that of the 2 world wars and the Cold War. More than 60% of journalists are also self-censoring out of fear of reprisals, harassment, judicial intimidation, and economic pressure. A state of emergency is in place in Sandy Beach, Alberta. The fire started Saturday night and has already destroyed at least 3 homes and badly damaged a 4th. No injuries have been reported, but residents remain on edge. Officials say while the fire is contained, shifting winds could cause the situation to change rapidly. 10 years ago today, the people of Fort McMurray experienced the most costly natural disaster in Canadian history.
We've been watching helicopters, emergency personnel, all of them flying through here trying to deal with the fires that have now got within meters of Highway 63.
Hasty exit. Might have been the last time I ever saw my house right there.
It's not just on the border. This is Fort McMurray burning.
A fast-moving wildfire raced through the city, causing widespread damage and panic, with 88,000 people forced to flee. A decade later, Fort McMurray is still rebuilding. Erin Chalmers reports on what's changed and what still needs to be done.
This is my home.
That's your home? Home is something Amber Leckie has learned not to take for granted. Her home was one of the more than 2,500 destroyed by the 2016 Horse River wildfire.
I know if the fire happened here again, I would not come back.
She is not alone. The wildfire was not only physically devastating for the community, but mentally as well.
The acknowledgement of mental health effects on events, that may be something we didn't really have a handle on at the time, but now we realize that things like this happen and the effect on each individual person is so much different.
2 people, Emily Ryan and her cousin Erin Hodgson, were killed during the evacuation while on the highway. This park has been named in her honor. And the evacuation plan was one of the 14 recommendations put forward following the fire, as well as looking into other possible routes out of this city.
You can only plan with what you have. We still have those same routes that we had back in 16.
In the works is the extension of Highway 686, a continuous east-west northern corridor linking Fort McMurray to Peace Country.
The sooner we can get that highway done, the more safe the community will be.
The province has put money into the budget, and Fort McMurray has built a road to the future highway. But 10 years later, there is still no exact timeline on when construction will begin. Whether talking about Fort McMurray, Slave Lake, or Jasper, these massive wildfires didn't start in the cities they destroyed. They moved in on them.
What we've done is the hazardous fuel reduction program goes out 5 kilometers from a community and looks at the vegetation, and it's the plan is to reduce as much of the highest volatility fuel from the landscape is what we're reducing there.
Is this what our house looks like?
Yeah.
Lecky is still rebuilding her life here, but she's confident the lessons learned from 2016 will ensure her home and her family isn't going anywhere. Erin Chalmers, Global News.
An Ontario senator has put forward a bill to expand the definition of who's considered a war veteran in Canada. Veterans of the First Persian Gulf War and the war in Afghanistan aren't recognized as such by the federal government. Heidi Petracek looks at what this potential change would mean to people who have served this country.
The Canadian Navy proved its worth in the Gulf War.
Retired Royal Canadian Navy Vice Admiral Duncan Miller has written a book about his experiences in the Gulf War, and to him, there's no question.
It was absolutely war.
But the Canadian government calls that conflict and everyone since, including Afghanistan, special duty service. Veterans want that changed.
Is it disrespectful? Yes. Do I believe the government is better than that? Yes.
It's not about compensation. It is about recognition.
And now Senator Hassan Yousaf has tabled a bill proposing a process to define wartime service, although it wouldn't change veterans' benefits.
We want the government to go back and look at all of the deployments since the Korean War to determine whether they meet the standard that will be established. The government will also have to assess those who were asked to go to Afghanistan.
Yousaf is optimistic, pointing to the Liberal Party's 2025 election promise to expand recognition of service. But passing the act will take time.
Since I introduced the bill, they have lost 3 veterans who have passed away. It's 35 years since the Persian Gulf conflict. And when you think of somebody might have been 40 years of age when they were dispatched, this is a long time.
It doesn't cost anything. It would make all the veterans feel, yeah, that's our due. That's what we should be honored as.
When Miller was in the Persian Gulf, he navigated around mines while sailing under skies streaked with missiles. With the Canadian Armed Forces now seeing its highest recruitment intake in 3 decades, he wants anyone who may end up in similar conflicts also recognized for the risk. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
A massive spike in suicide-related calls amongst kids. Coming up, the national effort to support a kids' help phone and why phones may be the problem. A nationwide effort today to support what many call a critically important service, Kids Help Phone. It comes as the number of children accessing the service has seen a huge increase in the last year alone. As Hirsch Singh reports, experts believe smartphones are a big part of the problem.
A walk so kids can talk.
Is Kids Help Phone's largest fundraising event of the year. It takes place at 16 sites across Canada.
At a time when kids in the country need mental health support more than ever.
Last year in 2025 alone, we saw 3.7 million interactions with Kids Help Phone.
In March, Global News spoke with the family of Marita Starr, an 11-year-old Winnipeg girl who died by suicide. While these stories may seem like isolated incidents, numbers say something else. Recent data from Kids Help Phone reports that suicide-related calls across Canada were up 43% among children under 12 years old in 2025.
20, 30 years ago, kids, all they had to worry about was the kids in their class, probably, and maybe during the school day. But now with the smartphone and with social media, like it's a 24/7.
Child psychiatrist Dr. Olivia McLeod places much of the blame on smartphones.
Excess screen use, higher rates of anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. Like it's clearly correlated in multiple studies, right? So this is probably going to be the smoking of our generation. 30 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, what were we doing?
Experts add that kids need adults that they can trust around them. They say the key
is continue to speak with your kids and leave room to just listen. Silence isn't the enemy. Sometimes it takes time for kids to process how to say something out loud.
Resources like Kids Help Phone are available for anyone at any time. Parents, concerned adults, friends, loved ones, and even kids themselves can reach out to them on their website, kidshelpphone.ca. Harsh Singh, Global News, Winnipeg.
Ahead, unsolved murder, the search for justice and a killer 30 years after the shooting death of a Montreal police officer. It's an unsolved mystery. 30 years ago, a Montreal police officer was gunned down during a routine traffic stop. This week, Montreal police and the family gathered for the anniversary to remember Officer André Lalonde. The person who pulled the trigger hasn't been found, but as Mike Armstrong reports, the case remains open.
Decades have passed, the pain has not. Officer André Lalonde's family returned to the very spot where he was killed. In the front row, Jacques Chéneau, the former chief of police. The loss, he says, feels like yesterday.
You just don't forget it. You know, we have an obligation to remember what happened.
Constable André Lalonde was a 30-year veteran of the force, just weeks from retirement. He was working in the quietest, safest corner of the city, Senneville on Montreal's West Island. At 10:15 in the morning, April 29th, 1996, he pulled over a car with a noisy muffler. Lalonde was shot 3 times. The theory has always been that whoever was driving the vehicle was likely wanted by police. If he'd handed over his license, he'd have been arrested. Instead, he pulled out a gun and fired. Lalonde's partner, Claude Abbé, was one of the first people on the scene. Abbé says he had just left Lalonde minutes before the shooting. He was running an errand and was supposed to come back. Instead, tragedy struck. Now, the car was found later that morning. It had been doused with gas and set on fire to burn any evidence. A 1991 Ford Tempo. It had been reported stolen just days earlier. The case is still 30 years later, considered open and active.
Yesterday, we talked to the investigator of the case, and we know they are working on it, still working on it, so it's a relief.
I guess that they know who he is.
Now, Patrick Lalonde says he's been told investigators have an idea who killed his father. They've just never had enough proof for conviction. That suspect spent most of the last 30 years in prison for other crimes, but is now out on parole. Lalonde says the family can't focus on that.
Life goes on, and you have to continue, but you don't forget.
Justice, I believe in justice. Justice will happen. I'm so positive about that.
All these years later?
Oh, takes time. Sometimes it takes much more time than we think. But I still believe in justice.
Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Canadian fans holding out hope in a do-or-die game for the Raptors. Next. A do-or-die basketball game in Toronto as well, as the Raptors play Game 7 of their playoff series against the Cleveland Cavaliers following their stunning Game 6 win on Friday. Tonight, their NBA championship dreams hang in the balance. Lexi Benedict is outside Scotiabank Arena, where Raptors fans believe they can do it. Lexi.
Colleen, Raptors fans are still riding high after Friday's big win, and the energy here outside Jurassic Park is pretty high as fans pack into the square for this winner-take-all matchup between Toronto and Cleveland. The Raptors have already proven they can win an elimination game. Toronto's own RJ Barrett hit an unforgettable three-pointer win in Game 6, a shot that instantly brought back memories of Kawhi Leonard's iconic playoff buzzer beater during that championship run back in 2019. It's been a roller coaster of a season for this Raptors team. They battled through injuries, and while tonight's game may be happening in Cleveland, fans here at home are still bringing all of the hype, energy, and belief that this team can pull off another big moment.
Confident, super excited.
Oh, they got it.
Raps in 7.
We're getting the dub tonight.
We're definitely getting the dub tonight.
Raptors fans here tonight hoping that this team can keep their playoff run alive and punch their ticket to the second round. Colleen?
Fingers crossed. Lexi Benedict in Toronto. Thanks, Lexi. And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Colleen Christie. Tonight's Your Canada is Vancouver, where a Global News viewer captured footage of orcas swimming in Burrard Inlet this weekend. The viewer says they were notified on social media that the orcas were there and quickly rushed to the scene to catch a glimpse. Thanks for watching. Donna will be back with you tomorrow. Have a good night.